So self-inquiry. I met Mooji some years back, and he talks about self-inquiry, which is essentially, I'm going to go deep today. So either you can hack it or you can't. So, Mooji is about enlightenment. Mooji is about transcending all suffering. Mooji is about ending that cycle of always being in this limited sense of separation and always striving of being in the past, the future, or the world is not enough. Mooji, I would say, and all enlightened teachers are, talking about what we were earlier on before, beyond this place of need and lack. And a lot of people, for me, the core of the ego is that I require fear and a sense of separation for survival, or to get what it needs, or to control the world. This sense of being contracted into a limited sense, and then the more you get contracted into the body and the thoughts, then the more there is this sense of lack, and the more the thoughts go into some type of control. If only the body was thinner, if only I could get a partner, if only I could lose weight, if only, because as you start to identify with anything in the world which is limited. So what is limited in the world? What is limited and can pass? Your true nature can never pass, and it can be recognized, which is enlightenment, now. In fact, only now you can recognize that which is eternally present, the eternal beingness, the eternal oneness. And the way you recognize that which is eternal is through grace and through releasing identification or projected meaning or tracking or hooking to anything within the realm of form. So what is the realm of form? We have thoughts, we have the body, we have the senses, we have memories, we have even the negative emotions that come up. Even like I was saying before, St. Francis said, what you're looking for is where you're looking from. What does that mean? It means like when you're in your ego, you're looking outwards to get a fix. You're like in a state of lack when you're identified with your thoughts and your body. And it's like the ego then offers, well, you're not feeling 100% satisfied with life. So the ego goes and it projects outward. If only I could be a bit richer, if only I had a bit more money, if only I wasn't so old, if only I thought the world was a safe place to be, if only I had the right partner that could fix my life. So as soon as you start to identify, here's the thing, as soon as you start to identify with anything within the ego, this sense, the more you identify with the thoughts and the body, the more this constriction starts to happen. Why? Because, your infinite presence, your infinite beingness, the timeless now, is limitless, eternal, happy, joyous and free, beyond all suffering, beyond death, beyond any illusions that either from the personal illusions or the collective illusions of this world. So it's beyond all of that. It's the one place, as Buddha said, enlightenment, when you're free of all attachments, it's the one place where you can fully transcend suffering. So if you want enlightenment, not everybody does, and that's fine. I was a food addict, and if I see a food addict on the street, I don't really try and convert them into enlightenment. They're happy eating their donuts, so that's fine. But I had so much suffering with addictions that I got the kidney failure. Some of you don't know my story, but I was in active addiction, several addictions. I was working in the stock market. On a flight back from New York, my feet started to swell, and I was admitted to the Royal Free Hospital, and the doctors say, we don't know what to do to keep you alive. And it was a moment of, I would call, powerlessness. There was nothing I could do or control in the world. All my options were cut off. And that was when my ego surrendered, and I had an infinite, heavenly, timeless spiritual experience came upon me. And it was like when the ego surrenders, it's addiction to thoughts, it's addiction to life, it's addiction to the body, and just lets go. If you could let go for a split second, then you'd get this eternal bliss, this heavenly, sublime stillness that would come upon you. So I knew that, and then I was led through miracles to enlightened teachers, because I hadn't let go of every single attachment, even though I had an experience. on near death, still, later on, all my attachments came back, all my fears, all my identifications with the body. So all of these had to find, Dr. Hawkins, who's of course a miracles teacher, talked about, the 12 steps as being the basics of spirituality, especially if you're an addict. But the Course in Miracles is like what I call, I'm going to take the mickey out of the Course. I don't think the Course is strong enough to take it. 365 lessons to enlightenment. And, but, teachers like Mooji, Eckhart Tolle, are going like straight for the jugular. Like, go for the timeless presence now. Forget 365 days to that. Can you recognize it now? And I'd ask you to listen along with me and participate. Because, okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing you've got to realize. And if you participate with me, you'll get something from what I'm talking about. Now, this is a mug. Now, I know you guys know this is a mug, but this is a mug. This is what I call an object, or a type of form. It's got a discrete shape, it's got a colour, and now a mug is something which to most people is meaningless. It's like something that people can't bother to try and get too fascinated about or obsessed about. Unless you're a tea addict, in which case you could, you see. But, so there probably is an addict that would get addicted to collecting mugs. But most people, when they see a mug, it's very clear that this mug is being observed. Like, there's no problem that one is the mug, you see, because it's a meaningless object with virtually no projections onto it, no past association or meaningful past association with the mug. It's very, very clear that it is being observed, but you are not the mug. If I had a tea addict here, or a mug addict, a collector of mugs, it could be almost like they feel they are the mug. They'd be enmeshed with it. It'd be so close that they feel it's a part of them. That's very, very important. To recognize your eternal self or your beingness, you must let go to get that detachment from everything in the world, to let go of that attachment, that hooking in. You see, with a mug, if there was only a mug that you were slightly attached to, and you let go of that attachment, you made it meaningless, so that you just could easily ignore it or not ignore it. If you made it meaningless, then if that was your last attachment, you'd be enlightened, because it's very, very clear that the mug is not you. You see, and if that was your last attachment, you would now be an enlightened sage, like all the enlightened teachers, like Buddha. So now, when you become attached, or when you have projected meaning or specialness, or if you project magical qualities onto any type of thing that passes before the witnesser or the observer, it then becomes what I call sticky, or it stays around, you see. Now for most of you, I'm guessing you're not mug addicts. Mug addicts. That's funny, isn't it? You're not mugs, but hopefully not. But it's detached, so there's a clear sense of witnessing and separation. It's like there's no confusion that this mug is tormenting you. It's in fact, within a split second, probably you have forgotten the mug. It's that boring and meaningless and neutral. So now, that holds the key to enlightenment and what's creating suffering, or this sense of separation in the present moment. If you're holding on to fear in the body, if you're holding on to like an image, I need a partner in the future to be happy, or if there was a thought that if I had more money I'd be safe, or if there was a thought that unless I'm being spiritual enough and doing enough service, then I'm not good enough. All of these things, well, these things become what I call sticky, or get hooked into, or are identified. The only reason they're identified with is because the ego holds some kind of relationship with these things. If the relationship was neutral, or the relationship was meaningless, all projections had been withdrawn, it wouldn't stop the witnessing of the mug, but it wouldn't lose your spacious, limitless sense and the timeless now, because it's not being tracked, it's not being identified. It won't keep coming back and again, or there won't be. The more you're interested in something, the more it seems to be loud in your consciousness. And when you're totally uninterested, you've let go of all hooks and all projections, it's more or less insignificant or unnoticeable. It doesn't block your presence, your eternal presence. That tiny little demonstration is the key. And I would say, if you want to be totally free and never suffer again, then what I've described, anything that creates suffering in your consciousness on a daily basis, or a moment-by-moment basis, has to be given the chop, you see. And of course, I'm not going to say that giving it the chop is easy, because in terms, like I think the Buddhists talk about this, in order to be enlightened, you have the attractions and the aversions. I guess if you went to a 12-step group, you'd have your fears and resentments and your dependencies, you see, or your outcomes. You know, probably in 12-step language, it would be like fears, resentments, and control, and overthinking or negative thinking. And in 12-step level, those things which are attractions are usually the dependencies, those needs or those desperations, those things, those cravings for something in the future or something that's in lack now and needs to be fulfilled in order to be okay. So I like the attractions and the aversions. Now, everybody doing spiritual work in the beginning is really happy to let go of the horrible stuff. You know, it's like, oh yeah, fears, resentments, body identification, all of those stuff. Usually everyone's like up for that. But so anyway, those things can be let go of, and if you let go of all of those things like guilt, thoughts, even in the 12 steps, but also in the Course in Miracles, it says one of the lessons in the Course in Miracles is, I place the future in the hands of God. You know, I place the future in the 12 steps we say, we stop being in the past or the future. But, if you let go of the past and the future, and you let go of identifying with interest in anything in the now, then you'll be in the eternal now. Now, what are the other things? So, I've just described, whether it be like a need for a boyfriend or a thought of unworthiness, or... Now, here's the thing with some of the negative feelings is that, like let's say you're suffering from fear or a repetitive image that you need to get something in the future, or a thought of guilt, whatever you might be suffering from, you see, something is tracking that with interest. Something has given that thought or that object or that image meaning. Now, here's the thing, like when I was a food addict, I used to like donuts. If there would be a plate with donuts on the table, I would just be fixated on those donuts for the whole duration of this meeting, because there's so much interest and there's so much meaning, and it's like I'd be fixated. And if someone asked me what was your experience of the spiritual group, I'd just say I remember the donuts on the table. That would be it. Were there people there? I can't quite remember. It's a bit vague. So that's what I call like high level identification and projected meaning. So with that, it's like, there's this high level projected meaning on those things. And we're on again. Yeah, she's going to miss the George Clooney bit, but never mind, it's her loss. And yeah, so that's the whole thing with what you're very interested in or very attached to or have a lot of projected meaning on. Those things become like very, very loud. Now, what I would say is that now everyone knows this, but if you're holding on to fear in the stomach, for example, or if you're holding on to sensations in the body, or if you're holding on to guilt, the reason it's there is because there's interest in these things. They're given value, they're given projected meaning, and actually they disappear when there's no longer any interest in them. So that's a great thing to know with feelings. So the thing with here's the thing, like you can use this on everything. I mean, the same principle applies. Once you realize this is true, the gateway to let go of all your suffering is there if you're willing to let it go, which you don't have to be willing to let it go. So, like I've shared, and this is a universal human phenomenon. Like there was one day in here, and if you're holding on to fear, if you're holding on to an image, if you're holding on to guilt, if you're holding on to sensations in the body, then the thing to know is that it's because there's high level of interest and identification with it, and there's a lot of projected meaning. Now, here's the thing, so whatever you're holding on to, listen to what I'm going to say next with whatever you're holding on to, that's sticking around, that's giving you trouble, is that, I was talking in this room some time back, and you've heard this, many of you have heard this before, and I was just talking, and then I said to everyone, can you hear the traffic noise outside? And then everyone could hear the traffic noise outside, but before they couldn't hear the noise, you see. So, what does that mean? Well, to most people, they'd say, if there's traffic noise outside, you have to hear it. Well, no. A person who's interested in traffic noise, who's hooking into it, and who's identified with the traffic noise, they hear a lot of noise. For someone who's totally uninterested, or not hooking into it, or noise is meaningless, they don't hear it any longer, or a type of noise is meaningless. Like, I live outside a tube track, the Piccadilly line. And in the beginning, when I went there, in the beginning, I could hear the vibration and the noise. But after a short while, I couldn't hear it, And then people would come around to my house and say, how can you live here? Like, every 5 minutes, there's like this tube running past in the garden. And then they would say it, and then I go, oh, no, I don't hear anything. Now, if you can understand, now I know you all identify what I'm saying, because you've all experienced that. So it's bullshit that just because something is present and you're experiencing it, that you can let it go and not experience it. I'd say it's bullshit. The only reason you're experiencing something is because you're identified and you're hooking in. If you fully let go of your identification and hooking in, and this goes for fear, for noise, for thoughts, for tracking time, for being interested in the body. If you let go of that, if you're willing to use like self-inquiry, you see, remember, when you, like, self-inquiry is like to ask the question, what's observing this? Because when you're not observing something, when you're not in the, what I call non-attached observer, like the observer which is not interested in anything that's passing, then there's a sense of oneness and timelessness and peace. But as soon as the ego tracks any type of form, whether it be a noise, whether it be a mug, whether it be a feeling in the body, whether it be a passing thought, whether it be anything or a body sensation, then there is this experience of contraction into that. But actually, there is nothing in this world that you need to be a victim of. That's what the Course in Miracles says. There's no such thing as, oh, I've got a pain in the body, so I have to be a victim of that. There's no such thing of, I had a thought about I haven't got enough money, so I have to be a victim of that thought. There is no such thing as, I'm old and therefore I'm not good enough. I'm a victim of my appearance. These things are things that, because you give interest, power, identification and projected meaning to those things, they tend to stick around. So this is a great thing, If you want to let go of your interest in thoughts, one of the first lessons of Course in Miracles was, all my thoughts are meaningless. If you did that, if you were willing to go to the lengths to make any special or meaningful thought meaningless, all of them, then you'd be beyond thought. There would be no thought that would hook you in and pull you into that tighter constriction of thoughts or future or past, or that the present moment is not good enough. Even thoughts, there's like a collective, there's like an unconscious mechanism which is busy tracking time. But if you let that mechanism of tracking time go, you're in the timeless. If you let go of thoughts, then you are experiencing the thoughtless. Even though thoughts may flit across, they're like mugs. They're nothing to do with what you are. They're far away and they have no appeal. If you let go of tracking the body, the body is like located in space, and feelings in the body are also located. But if you let go of tracking the body and space and location, if you let go of tracking anything, what's observing location? What observes all locations is locationless. What observes time is timeless. What observes all passing feelings, like fears and guilts, is fearless. So that's the secret. And I've experienced so many miracles. If I'm willing to let go, sometimes, if it's a negative feeling or a negative thought, well, even negative or positive thoughts, sometimes, let's start with the negative first, because everyone wants to get rid of the negative. But even holding on to the positive is going to stop the experiencing of the eternal now. You see, no, I've got to hold on to being a good person. I have to hold that thought on, otherwise, that is holding on to an attachment or a belief. There are some which are more constructive, but I would say, and the Course would say, that all of them are equally meaningless. Even if it's like, I'm going to be like feeding I have to hold on to my thought that I'm going to feed the starving for the rest of the day. But even that would be holding on to that thought with meaningfulness would create duality and identity. But there's different levels of consciousness. I'm not saying anything's bad. But so when you like fear or a special thought like I haven't done enough today to achieve, those are held on. The reason you experience them constantly and they torment you is because something is interested and identified with them. But you can do exactly the same thing as with noise. Like that even if there was a lot of noise outside, if you let go of all interest, I'll come on to how you let go in a moment. But there's a natural capacity. In fact, in the states of enlightenment, it's almost like it's timeless and nothing much is happening. There's just like a silent stillness and bliss and a feeling of oneness and joy, and there's nothing that needs to be done, said, or achieved. It's like the universe then orchestrates, and there's nothing there. And actually, nothing is tracked from the ego, so everything is like the timeless now. There is no thought about what I did yesterday, or I need to prepare for tomorrow. That's all released. So hence that brings up, a lot of fear, because the ego always wants to could be interested in fear because it believes that fear is useful. So it's hyper interested. If I let go of my fear, then I won't be able to survive. If I need to have meaningful thoughts, so I can earn a living. So these are then what I call special or meaningful thoughts. Anything that's special or meaningful, or there's interest or there's hooking, if there's a lot of hooking, it becomes very close. And when there's very little hooking, it seems like it's distant and far away and it's forgotten very easily. So, this is the secret. You see, if you're suffering from fear and you want to let it go, if you're suffering from a repetitive thought, some of these repetitive thoughts can seem like the very good thoughts. Like, I need to worry about money all the time, or, I need to think about what I need to do tomorrow. Otherwise, everything will fall into chaos. Some of these thoughts seem to be very useful. I'm not saying they're not useful, but if you want to be free, then they're not useful on that level, because they're not allowing your eternal self. So if you wanted to be, not that anybody has to be free. It's just how much suffering do you want? If you want to be in total fear and totally in the future and the past all the time, or do you want to feel moderately connected, but still slight fears and moderation and trying to be a good person? It's a higher level. Or do you want to be totally free? And when I experienced, I was lucky. I had a near-death experience and a white light spiritual experience when meeting Mooji, when he asked me what I was beyond my thoughts. So I know that which I am can never die. I know that which I am is eternal. I know that which I am is beyond all fear and beyond all thought and can never ever die. So all these thoughts and this need to control the future or to be identified with the body or fears or guilt or whatever, they're all like the torments of my ego illusions, and I know it's not real. I can never die. Now that sounds quite threatening if you're identified with the body and in meeting objectives and in like holding on to thoughts. That sounds scary, and nobody has to do it, but I know it's safe to let it go, and for myself, I'd be willing to let everything go. In fact, that is my path. There's still some thoughts which are meaningful, and I'm working on those. But when it's fully transcended, that's the total freedom. So anything. How do you let it go? Let's say, I'll give you an example. It's like how you use self-inquiry. It's like Okay. If you've got like, if there's like, let's say there's a thought or a feeling that you're hooking into, you ask what's observing it. So let's say, and if you get, let's say there's a thought of I'm unworthy, and it seems to be hooked into continuously. Then what the process is, you ask what's observing this thought. If you go to you ask the question what's observing. It's not like an intellectualization question, and it's not even a visualization question, but something is here that is witnessing this thought because it comes and goes. So there is a witnessing of it. So you ask the question, what's observing the thought? That should hopefully give you some detachment. Now, if you're in this observing of the thought and you're still interested in the thought, then you ask, what's observing the interest or the interested observer? So you should start to get some more space from it. As soon as you fully let go of all interest and identification by doing this process, which is called self-inquiry, it's like letting go of your hooks. What's observing? Don't be enmeshed in any thought or any feeling in the body. Don't be enmeshed in the future. Then you start to get this spaciousness because you've stopped giving it energy. You've stopped hooking into it. It's stopped being meaningful. So you just ask this question, what's observing it? See, if there's thoughts, what's observing the thought? And if that observer is still enmeshed with the thought, well, what's observing that observer, observing the thought? So you should start to get, if you're doing it correctly, you should start to feel this sense of limitless, eternal presence. And actually that thing which was very loud, like a particular thought, starts to disappear. Because when there's no meaning or interest or hook in anything, it disappears. That's the great thing. Even if there was like huge pain or fear in the body, and I've actually had that. I had a transplant operation for a kidney, and I was determined not to take any painkillers after the operation, just to experience the pain and surrender to it. And it wasn't easy, but then I had the thought that, I wasn't going to get any sleep because it was very intense, because they'd just cut open my stomach. And then I just put on some Muji on the headphones, and my enlightened teacher, and he said, like, what's observing? What's observing the pain? What's observing you being interested in the pain? I fell asleep. It was like as soon as you let go of the interest and fascination in anything, even excruciating pain, it just vanishes in a split second. So I've had many miracles like that happen. So what I'm here to say is that everything can be released if you let go. What creates suffering is that you still have some kind of relationship with a thought, with the fear, with the guilt, with the future, with the past, with the past. There's an addiction to thoughts passing by. If you were not interested in any thought that passed by, then it would be much easier to be in the timeless now. Because as soon as you hook into thoughts, you can be in the past, the future, this moment is not good enough. So all of those things occur. Or if you hook into sensations in the body, then suddenly there's this constriction. You can't be in the timeless now because you're hooking in the body. So everything can be released, you see. So there's nothing. And one of the easy ways is just to practice that. So you don't have to do it through self-inquiry. The Course in Miracles. But I would say use the Course in Miracles to put everything on the block if you want total freedom. Both the bad thoughts and the good thoughts. If you don't want total freedom, that's fine. Keep the thoughts you want to keep, which is also okay. But, there is, the more you do the practice of unhooking from anything that's held in location, the more you become locationless. Like what's observing the location of the body is like locationless. What's observing this room is beyond location. What observes time passing is actually that which has no interest in time and is observing it and has no interest is in that field of timelessness. So you become limitless beyond location. You become timeless beyond time. And if you stop tracking any thought, giving it any thought meaning, or even the interest in all thoughts are rendered meaningless, then it's almost like you become thoughtless, or in the eternal stillness of now. So it's just a recognition, and that is recognized right now. And hopefully you've recognized that there's something eternally still, peaceful, of eternal love and eternal safety now, if you let go of all identification with thoughts, body, future, location, time. It's always here, and it just requires the release. So anything that suddenly blurts out and stops you from being in that eternal presence is something which has interest or projected meaning, or is hooked into. So then you have to ask the question of, do you want to keep it, or do you want to let it go? And it's your choice. If you want to keep it, you can keep it. If you want to let it go. Often with highly identified things, they can bring up fear to let go of something which you've been, like if I let go of my fear, I need it to survive. Or if I let go of my thoughts of the future, I need that to survive. So always these fears come up in letting go, and you don't have to let go. You can hold on, and if you fully let go to enlightenment, then it's up to the universe what happens with your life next, because you're self-centered, trying to tell the universe what to do with your life after you fully let go has gone. So it could be like you're blissed out under a coconut tree speaking to a few people for the rest of your life, or it could be that you're doing lots of service in the world, but that's the universe's business. Your self-center is gone. So this brings a lot of fear with a lot of people, because they go, I'll let go of everything as long as I know I have guarantees that it'll look this way afterwards. Like I'll have lots of money, people will just see how much of a lovely person I am, being helpful to others. So these kind of thoughts come up at the last minute, So, which is fine, and you can hold on to them, and no one has to let them go. But if you let go of everything, it's the universe's business what happens next. And it might not look glamorous, or it might look glamorous to the outside world, but it's not really. When you've lost your self-center, it doesn't matter. Whether you're just under a tree and your mum's saying to you, you haven't done enough today, like get out from under that tree and stop talking to people about nothingness and go and get a job. You see, so those kind of things, but you've let go now, so that doesn't really matter. Or, in fact, I think that was one of the things with Ramana Maharishi. His mother came, and he was like an enlightened sage sitting in a little room, speaking to people, and his mother tried to implore him. And I think he said something along the lines of, I can't remember exactly, who you think your son is no longer here. But he was compassionate about it. But her entreaty back into the world had no effect, you see, because you've transcended the world. And I also believe that as well, like people could have said that with Jesus, like, oh, why did you allow yourself to be executed? You could have stayed around and taught for many years, or why didn't you just stay with your family? Why were you trying to teach people? So different people have different projections of what enlightened teachers do or don't do. Or Jesus was angry, so obviously he wasn't the real deal. So these things, but it's up to the universe. If you fully let go of everything, it doesn't really matter whether the world judges you or not. It doesn't matter any longer because you let go. So that's the thing with the final step, and that brings up the last fear. But at the lower level, there's sainthood. So you can hold on to some level of identity, and it's probably in alignment with the saints. You've still got a minute level of ego, but you're probably out there like feeding, helping lepers and feeding the hungry all day long, and then you're a saint. You're hardly ever self-centered. But that's not enlightenment. Sainthood, enlightenment, it's up to the universe what happens. You might look like a saint, or you might look like you're dossing under a tree. It's just, or sitting in a room on your own with a few people around you. It can be anything. So, I'm inspired. I see the Course in Miracles as being letting go of everything in the world of fear and separation and form to recognize your eternal true self. So it's to let go of even that, even looking like a good person, doing lots of good deeds in the world. Even that needs to be transcended to recognize the true self. But I haven't got anything against saints, I haven't got anything against criminals. They're all allowed to be whatever they want to be. It's just a thing of letting go. So, okay.